came in, the air went out.
We got Winston in Hong Kong, who was waiting last week. How you doing, Winston?
Thanks. Yeah, I sent you a debate with Philo71, and basically the position that Philos takes is the one that St. Augustine did, which is basically God judged it better to bring good out of evil than to suffer no evil to exist. And they can't even, these fundies can't even see the contradiction, the oxymoron in the phrase suffer no evil. One of the examples he brought forward was how there could be someone 100 times worse than Hitler, but allowing him to live would bring massive amounts of good, such as the Diary of Anne Frank. And I'll say this now, I would rather have Anne Frank alive in the world today than be inspired by her diary. And here's another soundbite. Quarks of good do not justify galaxies of suffering. And if the fundy asks what a quark is, ask him to look behind an electron.
That's cute. The whole issue with the problem of evil that seems to escape a number of theists and apologists, they start talking about, well, you couldn't have no suffering, you couldn't have no evil. Well, first of all, we've got to be really careful when we start labeling things good, evil, whatever.
Yeah, evil is a dangerous word.
But it's you know, if I agree, you would be. I'm fine with the fact that eventually I'm going to die, and that to me adds meaning to my life. I also can appreciate the fact that, you know, I can burn myself or I can feel really good, and that I can contrast these things. Yes, you're going to need differing degrees of things, and unless everything is just static, you're always going to have degrees, and one can be judged better than the other by whatever subjective standard you want.
Levels of comfort.
The problem of evil, when it's presented by free-thinking people, is not, hey, why is there good and evil? Why is there bad things happening? It's why is there seemingly unnecessary, excessive suffering that appears to serve no purpose?
Yeah, tsunamis and hurricanes and Ebola and all that.
In the presumptive role that Christianity, for example, would place God and God's plan and the meaning and purpose and value of life, etc., that role is one that seems to be in conflict, or it seems unnecessary to have the suffering that we see to the extent we see it. I'm not a big fan of the problem of evil argument. I think it opens way too many little doors and windows for people to, well, yeah, but what about this and what about that and what about this? All I care about, tell me what you believe and why, and either you have a good reason or you don't. Do you have evidence for it? You know, saying, well, you know, if there's a God, why is there suffering? Even saying it in the proper way.
You know, hats off to Epicurus for thinking of that, you know, long before Jesus was even thought of, right? So, you know, it's an old conundrum, and it's a goodie.
Yeah, Epicurus came up.
Oh, Epicurus on the problem of evil. I'm thinking of Youth for a Dilemma. Okay.
Anyway, so hats off to the man. He's a hero, no doubt.
But it's only a problem for certain specific ideas about God in the first place, which is, you know, when you talk to, you haven't gained any ground. It's like if you've got an argument that demonstrates that there can't be a God that is both a square and a circle, you haven't gained any ground because you haven't covered God in any kind of broad sense. You've covered one very narrow definition. And in the case of the problem of evil, you're addressing a God that is necessarily omniscient, omnibenevolent, and omnipresent, or at least, you know, omnipotent in the sense that they could take action. Well, okay, yeah. And I realize that those are words that a lot of people use to describe their God, but you have, by eliminating that and showing the contradiction there, you really haven't gained a whole lot of ground.
Well, I think the reason you don't gain ground is it's an intellectual argument, and people, I think, believe religions for emotional reasons, largely. And so I see this a lot where atheists are sort of talking past the Christians or the believers because they believe because it feels good or they're going to get some reward or it's satisfying or these sorts of things. And we're hitting the intellectual, you know, nail on the head. We're missing the thing that really matters to them. right?
And as we all know, nothing fails like prayer.
Yep.
The last
Yeah.
point I'd like to bring up is something that is prominent on atheist.com, and they trivialize suffering and they try to glorify God by comparing God to a parent who makes their children suffer
Thank you.
through the pain of a vaccination, so they won't get smallpox, chickenpox, rubella, and so on. And that's just ridiculous, because an all-powerful God would not need to use suffering. He could simply bypass the suffering
Yeah.
and create the greater good straight away.
Well, this is back to the argument from evil, right? Yeah.
And there's the old "he cannot give them smallpox anymore" thing, which I got from Frank Sindler, but it's on an old episode of the Nonprofits. It's a really amusing little song about all the wonderful diseases that God can inflict on children.
Jesus loves the little zygote.
Jesus loves the little zygotes.
Yes, look that one up.
But
That's
he
a
cannot
good one.
give him smallpox anymore because
Yeah.
we eradicated it.
Yes, a victory for science and reason. Yeah.
Science has trumped the suffering that you seem to think your God felt was necessary.
Now that's actually a great example, because there's an example where humans have made up their minds to do something and gone out and done it, and removed that suffering from the world. And hooray for us.
Well, Winston, thanks a lot for calling.
Thanks.
Right, thanks, Matt.
When you came in, the air went out, and every shadow filled up with doubt.